There's this dating app that came out of Stanford that was really popular, or is really popular. But there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about it. But their premise from this like social psychology, it came out of a class at Stanford, and then they implemented it on their college campus. You got 3 drops, which was like 3 matches. That was the only people you could talk to that week on this dating app. That sort of was this premise for me. I was like, oh, there's this interesting sort of exclusivity makes you take an action versus like, oh, I could just continuously swipe through my matches, if that makes sense.
So for decades, mortgage recruiting has pretty much looked the same. Recruiters call, loan officers dodge the call or block the number, companies pitch, and then people are left thinking, well, what's really out there? So what if there was a better way? Today I'm sitting down with Ellen Duncan, and she believes the recruiting process is long overdue for a disruption. And as the founder of mLoop, she's building what many are calling, well, some are calling, and I think it's pretty clever, the Match.com or Tinder for mortgage recruiting by creating a private platform where loan officers can explore opportunities without the hassle of talking to recruiters and lenders, and they can connect in a completely anonymous way and in a different way. So actually, this conversation isn't just about recruiting. It's about innovation, entrepreneurship, solving real problems, and what happens when someone sees an industry challenge and decides to build a better solution. So, Elle, thank you so much for joining me today on Lending Leadership. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this because as a former recruiter, when I didn't even know I was a recruiter, to be honest, when I first got hired. But yeah, there was a big problem with just trying to get somebody on the phone and trying to sell yourself. And I feel like you've really created an awesome vehicle that kind of just changes the whole game.
I know it's been interesting since, I'm sure we'll go into a little more of the background, but since launching and sort of even bringing this sort of proposition or value proposition to both sides, the lenders who are looking to recruit and originators who are potentially open to a move, everyone's like, man, I should have thought of this. So this is so obvious. Like it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. And I think that's just sort of one of those age-old, things that people know, but there can be a different way. We don't have to always do it the way it's been done.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. So let's talk about, where this idea came from. Because so many times we have an idea and we're like, that might be interesting. But you actually had this thought and did something about it. So back up, and because your background is not in recruiting, you actually have a really interesting all over the place background, mostly in marketing. But yeah, talk me through where this idea popped into your brain.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I am sort of primarily from outside of the industry. I've owned and run a independent consulting, marketing, growth strategy firm for about almost 6 years now. And in that work, came into this space. I was advising and then a fractional chief marketing officer for an IMB. And in that work, I was participating in recruiting, was helping in the storytelling of recruiting and, mapping out a journey and seeing where the conversion rates were. And I just started to really see that it's, I would say broken, that there's a lot of areas of opportunity to be fixed. One in particular, I was observing is participating in a conversation between a lender and an originator. And this was pretty far in the process. There was a lot of resources being spent to, wine and dine, fly people in, sit down all day. And the conversation was so basic. And I think I've, might have told you this story, Rachel, but it was like, what's your CRM? Do you have construction to perm loans? And I'm like, this could have been covered way back in your dating profile. Like, are you above 6 foot or what year were you born? And so it just felt again, backwards and off. And so in that moment, it was more of like, this does not have to be done the way it's always been done. Then this was in the spring of 2025. There's a lot happening around the NCAA transfer portal and putting more power into athletes' hands in that area of the world. I have family that are NCAA athletes and just a lot of conversation. And I sort of had that little aha moment of what if originators were the athletes and we put the power into the athletes or the originators' hands. And so, but like you said, we all tend to have ideas. I'm definitely have a bunch of ideas person. And so I mentioned this to a friend of mine in the mortgage space. He was like, yeah, it's interesting, but you probably need anonymity, poke some holes at it. I sort of tabled it mentally. he followed up about a month later and said, I keep thinking about your portal idea. So I owe him a lot of kudos. But so when he did that follow up, I had this feeling like, okay, it's worth exploring. And so since then, that was sort of end of summer of 2025, did a lot of independent research, market validation, and then, which we can go into the journey, but went live a couple months ago.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I really do. I think that there's definitely a brokenness, and I'm sure that's pretty frustrating. You're sitting at this table and they're like, "What's your CRM?" And you're like, "Hold on a second. This is completely backwards. That should have been talked about." And it probably was spoken about, but people forget, or I think the Uberification, if I'm saying that correctly, the Uberification or the Match.com. I know a podcast group, Podmatch, does this, and it's such a smart way to really start the relationship where someone can dip their toe in the water and just say, "Hey, I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm kind of curious to see what else is out there." I think that's so smart. So talk me through. You get this idea. You just launched it. What's the feedback been?
So across the board from the get-go, even back, I talk about sometimes my first couple lenders that came on the platform believed in it with a couple PowerPoint slides, which I'll be forever grateful for. And even we're like, sure, we'll sign your contract and give you a little bit of money. But they believed, again, they saw the opportunity in the idea. From say entirely positive, both sides, a lot of oh my gosh, this is so obvious. Some skeptics of, which has been interesting, I would say, and this is sort of a fixed mindset reaction that I've gotten around that ensuring neutrality, where people are like, well, who are the other lenders? Am I definitely going to have a fair shot? Maybe some people have said, I don't want my own loan officers to be on there. So I think this notion of I'm trying to find the partners on both sides that are really have a growth mindset. So this could be a different way of doing it. We're not going to get it right from the get-go, but let's go into this with a notion of neutrality, transparency, aligned with privacy across all things. So positive feedback, even from, I would say, traditional recruiters. That was one area where someone had said early on, like, oh, people would be like, oh, she's coming for recruiters. That job of recruiters done. And I always, use the analogy of sort of dating, where there's still this notion of we're going to make the data-driven match, but it's up to someone to nurture that relationship through to, in this scenario, someone joining a lender or, quote unquote, to a long-term relationship or marriage in the dating world. And so there still is a clear role even through mLoop matches for traditional recruiters.
Yeah, well, I think that goes with anything, right? I mean, people can use that same fear or have the same conversation around just AI in general. Like, is AI going to take my job? Well, no, there still needs to be the puppeteer pulling the strings, and there still needs to be the relationship behind it, because you can get so far. And again, I never used any of the dating apps, but I imagine, you look at someone's profile, they look perfect on paper, but then it's actual meeting them and the sparks that fly between the two people. It's the same thing in this situation, to actually sit down and break bread with someone and see, what the vibe is that this will take you so far and get you there, but it's always
get
about
you
the
that much
relationship.
further to have a better conversation when you sit down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's talk about just the recruiting process in general, because like I said, I've been on that side of the equation, and, it's so hard to break through. And so many times people kind of hold their cards very closely, even if they know they're going to be making a move. It's like, well, I'm not talking to this recruiter. So, how have you really just seen that table being turned? Or maybe, it's new. So what are your hopes there?
Definitely. No, it's new, but we have some early proof points. On both sides of the table, the notion of anonymity is really beneficial. And so what I mean by that, to your point on the loan officer side, there is this initial, shield, trepidation, fear of that people are going to find out they're looking. Could it impact their current employer role? Just having, is it going to lead to that many more phone calls? But on the lender side, there's also, I'd say, a hurdle some of them are dealing with around assumptions of the lender name. So, I'm Ellen, that's representing X company, and that there's maybe a market assumption of who that company is, or maybe regionally they have a reputation, but nationally it's different culturally and things like that. And so when you first match on mLoop, so when a loan officer receives a match, the lender themselves is also anonymized. As soon as they say they're interested, the lender's name is revealed, the loan officer stays anonymized. But it's an interesting, we think a pro, the data, behavior will start to play it out to see how that works. But we've seen it actually as a pro because, from the notion of swipe left, swipe right, let's just say you and loan officer initially was like, oh, I know that company. I don't like those people, but it might be different, or it's a branch, or it's a DBA, or whatever it may be, that you're not going to get that initial swipe left, or we call it a decline, but a decline at name. You're at least potentially going to get to the conversation, and you might be, oh, I was a 96% match. Maybe I will just see what they have to say. They never even know they're talking to me until I reveal it. So long answer to the anonymity on both sides has actually been, we think, more of a pro than we realize, even on the lender side.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I mean, sure, people have these preconceived notions, right? Of, oh, yeah, I know that company, or I know someone who went there and it was terrible, or I know someone who's there, they're doing great. And that's all subjective, right?
Totally.
I mean,
or even, I've never heard of that company, where they still might decline. They're like, oh, they're not, I've never heard of them, so I'm not going to, when it could be a great match.
That's really cool. So what kinds of things, and actually, let me back up. So it starts with the loan officer, right? They're the ones starting it, and lenders and IMBs and brokerages, they can sign up on your platform. They fill out a whole profile, but then it starts with the loan officer filling in their information, correct?
Yeah. So I'll walk through in a sort of quick way. Exactly. So it's two-sided matching. So lenders create profiles that are based on, right now it's probably 76. We continue to optimize it, but data points, everything from their pricing, their products, their technology stack, their culture, growth opportunities. And then loan officers fill out. So loan officers are made aware, which we can talk through how we're doing that. Then they join. When they join, we validate their NMLS, their production, and then have them add in the rest of the sort of secret sauce details, which are what products do they want, what technology, what kind of culture, what kind of leadership, what kind of growth opportunities. So then you have both profiles in the database, and then the AI algorithm as the matching. But then where the journey begins is the loan officer is presented with the matches. So they're going to see up to 3 match cards at a time. It'll tell them the percent of match, what matched, what didn't match. We phrase it as worth discussing. And then they have the opportunity to connect or decline. Our goal is to get as many connections as possible, because that starts the conversation. When they choose connect, the lender's name is revealed, but the loan officer stays anonymous. So within the web app, a conversation starts. They would know they're talking to, which is, I know you're not, recruiting today, but Rachel at HMA, and you would know you're talking to loan officer 1, 2, 3, 4. You know that loan officer falls within your criteria of who you're looking for. So you at least know that much about who it is. So they're within your volume range you're looking for. They matched with you. And then the goal is obviously to get that loan officer to reveal, or just say, hey, connect with me offline. Here's my phone number. Or they can, within the platform, actually press reveal.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So are they able to, is there any kind of like last chance for the lender if the loan officer, goes quiet or ghosts them, or is it's really just up to the loan officer?
So great. I would say right now, the way it works is we're enabling a way to, we're not going to phrase it exactly, but like let the loan officer like gracefully bow out. So if they sort of aren't feeling it, they don't need to like ghost and everything like that. They can sort of close the conversation, and mLoop takes care of letting the lender know. Aside from that, the way that we're motivating loan officers to, once they're in a conversation, I was going to say something like vulgar about what to do, like basically take an action or don't take an action, is they can only have 3 matches or conversations happening at a time. So that's where because to that behavior, like we anticipate, a lot of people might just connect and then just sort of let those things be ghosted, but they won't get new matches unless they've basically dispositioned the conversation. They either have said, yep, now I'm talking to them, like they have my number, we're talking offline, or I'm no longer interested. And then that would unlock another match for them.
Okay. Okay, so it's limiting them to 3 conversations, 3
Three,
dates
you say three
at a
active,
time.
3 presented matches or conversations, just to, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Keep, there's where that came from. It's a little tangential, but it's interesting. There's this dating app that came out of Stanford that was really popular, or is really popular. But there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about it. Of course, the name is escaping me right now. But their premise from this like social psychology, it came out of a class at Stanford, and then they implemented it on their college campus. Is that you had 3 drops every Sunday? You got 3 drops, which was like 3 matches, and that was the only people you could talk to that week on this dating app. And so it's just that sort of was this premise for me. I was like, oh, there's this interesting sort of exclusivity makes you take an action versus like, oh, I could just continuously swipe through my matches, if that makes sense.
So, I had recently read something about dating apps just in general, and this might be a conspiracy theory, I don't know, but I thought it was interesting about how it's not always just to match people and create relationships and marriages for life. It's about keeping people on the app because they can constantly swipe, and the goal isn't always to, have them happy and married off, but it's to keep them on the app, to keep them kind of in this constant loop. But I really like that idea of having and allowing people 3 conversations at a time because it inspires action, like you just said.
Exactly.
So that's
Yeah, our
pretty.
goal to that point, we've gotten challenged a few times around, well, you're going to continue to, I'd say, expand this notion of 20% of loan officers, attrite or switch lenders year over year. And like, what if mLoop makes that into 25%? And then you're just really going to just sort of extrapolate this problem that's there. But I love to say, and again, proof will be in the pudding as we see this play out, but is that we're helping them hopefully find their long-term match, and where they do have the best fit and be able to do that. It's not that then a year later, mLoop is going to match them with another place, but that we're helping people either see there is a better fit for my business model out there, or maybe I am at the right fit. And it just, reaffirms that and gives that confidence, which would lead to longer term retention.
Yeah, I really like that too. I mean, how cool would that be? If somebody takes goes through this whole profile and all these different data points, and it's like, hey, guess what? You've been at the right place all along. You're doing great. I think that's pretty cool. So I want to talk about the data points because you said there's how many different data points? 70, 80, something like
We
that?
started with a lot. We started with close to 90. What we found
Oh,
is
really? Okay.
that was through a lot of interviews of just what are people looking for? What are all the things you could, call it filter or identify around what you offer or what you would be wanting. And especially we are going across broker, bank, IMB, depository. We are expanding into CD. So there are just a lot of different, niche things, broader things. So we culled it
Sure.
down just because of the length of onboarding. We really wanted to try to keep it to 10 minutes. I'd say we're at about 12 minutes right now, give or take. And then now we're using that data to optimize which points seem to be important to people. So we have the option for you to skip some questions. We have the option where we see a lot of people saying open to all. So they're not really differentiators in the matching process. So as we continue to optimize, we'll try to get it, down to the core set and then probably, augment, think about like cadence profile builds that we do across other things where it's like, oh, now let us know, what snack do you prefer in your hotel room? But like we could ask that down the line. We don't
Yeah.
need that initial matching.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. And when I come to visit this company, I would like only blue M&Ms on my rider. Yeah. Not necessarily the most important thing right in the beginning, but down the line, sure, you want to get to those specifics to really wow somebody. That's pretty cool. So, is there anything that you noticed in the data points that you were really surprised about?
A few things. I actually just released a newsletter today that
I saw it. I saw
that
it. It
where
was
it
good. It
starts to
was really
show
good.
this indicator. And again, I'm newer to the industry, learning a lot every day. But even when I came into the vertical, there was so much sort of delineation between broker, IMB, depository. So
Yeah.
are you a broker LO? Are you a traditional retail LO? Are you, wholesale? Are you like, and it felt like there are these sort of arbitrary lines. I'm like, yes, people make the jump, but you don't really like when you go from broker to IMB or vice versa. And um, so all that to say, of all the loan officers or originators, because there's branch managers too that have onboarded, 82% have said they're open to at least two or three of those contracts, and over 50% are saying they're open to all. So where I'd say there was this assumption coming in that you're at an IMB today, you probably are looking at an IMB. You're at a broker today, you're probably only looking at a broker. And it's really, the data is not, it's showing that lines are blurring. I think we see that on the lender side with people delegated, non-delegated, retail banks doing delegating non-QM, like where there's continue to be blurred lines. I think the majority of our IMBs that are on the lender side do offer access to a broker channel. So again, the data is showing that the lines are blurring.
That's surprising. That's really surprising because when I first started in recruiting, it was like, we had all of our different tools and platforms we'd look at to kind of pinpoint our ideal avatar. And, I remember them saying, oh no, don't even talk to the brokers. It's this whole brokers are better, IMBs are better. And there's that stigma, but that's interesting to know that 82% would be open to two or three and 50%.
And over, I think it was 55% that had checked open to all.
Wow. Okay, well, that gives me some hope for our recruiters out there. Like, hey, don't just discount somebody because they're wearing this hat right now. If it's a fit, it's a fit. It comes down to.
And even interesting, offering. This is more of an anecdotal point, but I was at the Mastermind Summit in Vegas, I guess now 2 weeks ago, and when I would spoke to a lot of people on both sides of the marketplace, but loan officers themselves, I mean, they're in their work. They don't, some of them are. I was like, oh, are you with are you retail IMB? Are you with a broker? And they're like, IMB? What do you mean by that? And not in a way to make them like to talk to, but they're in, they're just doing, like, they don't, it's such these like corporate way that we talk about it versus even the originators themselves are just, they're a loan officer. And so how are they, whoever they partner with to fund their loans.
Oh, that's funny. So they're like, what's that acronym? What are you talking about? You're like, oh, okay. Are you a broker? Yes. Okay. Well, then you're not in an IMB. That's funny. So, I remember, and this point kind of surprised me, and sure, everything ebbs and flows, but I'm curious what you're seeing right now in terms of the pillars, the big pillars that are really driving change, or the pillars that people are really staying at a company for. I was surprised that culture had such a high percentage. And this was a few years ago. And again, when I was really, really focused on primarily recruiting. Would you say that you're seeing any kind of trend or anything like that in terms of the key pillars of either what keeps someone at a company or makes them change?
Definitely. I'd say a few things are coming out. One is interesting. That's the hybrid or not. So I've seen more than a handful, and actually was just talking to a lender recently that said he lost a big recruit because of this, that want to have an office to go into. And I think they wanted one. Yep. And so we have actually a question that we originally removed from the onboarding that basically asked how to, do you want to be fully remote or do you want to have an office space to go into? And I think, you're seeing this across in general communities, but then I think even interesting in this vertical and for these roles that having a space outside the house that you can go, and whether it's for a community and or just have a place to meet with referral partners or do things that just stood out as something that people are wanting to filter on, which was interesting. The other part on culture or leadership and culture in general is the incentive programs. I'm seeing a lot more variety of what's offered, a lot more. We don't really care about President's Club, or we actually took all the money from President's Club and are offering it in spot bonuses, or like we're just there. People, I think, again, of things don't have to be done the way they've always been done. And I think there's maybe an industry or subset industry that's like, of course you need to have a President's Club, and of course it needs to look like this, but then people trying to meet their team members, their employees, their loan officers where they are. And if getting a spot bonus of $5,000 might mean a lot more than an all-inclusive vacay so that's been an interesting one too, of where people, less of the lenders offer a traditional President's Club vacation than I anticipated, and then have a different way of doing that. And I would say when you look at the weighting of it on a loan officer side, again, not as important as you would anticipate.
Yeah, I would think that would be a big game changer. Like, oh, we get to go on a president's club, partners club, chairman's club, whatever it's called, versus not having it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the old school kind of thinking, but you're right. There is no mold that you have to follow.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I do really like that. So,
Yeah. And then to the third is, and I talk about this a few times in some other where I've been asked, and we have not built this in on the product roadmap for sure, but it's sort of this just, I'll say cultural index, but really around, I have a lender that was like, Ellen, just match me with nice people. Like I want them
oh,
to have great business, do good volume, but like I just want someone that's going to be nice to my, processor that's not making a whole lot of money a year, and like just where, and I just those are the things that we're trying to think from a disc assessment or even some like third party quick, quizzes. You can do there's different ways you can do it, but I thought I just love that that's very reflective of that lender's culture that they're, chief growth officer, that's what they said. But yeah, people are just also wanting the right human connection as well.
yeah. I love that. Just match me with good, kind people. We always say that, like, we don't want to, and Robert says this, which I think is really funny coming from him, big guy. And he's like, we don't work with jerk face meanies. Like, no, we don't want to work with jerk face meanies. Yeah, because sometimes you spend more time with the people that you work with than your own family. And yeah, I get that about the hybrid piece too. That's really funny that you had initially taken that out. And I can see that. I mean, working from home, and we do, we're all up and down the East Coast. So
Yeah.
there are some branches that do have an office to go into, and some, I mean, I guess I could. It's a little bit further away from Yardley, but I get it. Working from home all the time, sometimes it is nice to get out of your yoga pants and your nice shirt and actually get dressed up
Yep.
and go into an office. So
Yep.
that, I would imagine, that is an important box to check or not
Mhm.
check.
Or have the option.
So
But yes, that one stood out to me this week. And yeah, so they're always on both sides. And so I try as much as possible. I personally onboard, go through, anyone can do it on mLoop.co, but personally co-onboard all the lenders that are active, meaning they're a paying part of the beta. Other lenders can onboard, and then, we'll look at whether they could fit into the beta or not. But then on the LO side, I'm really trying to do as much personal onboarding as well, just to get to know, again, what are people asking? What do they want? How are they reacting to different parts? Because we only know what we know. And that's the whole point of the beta, is just to really match on what's important to you versus, ancillary things.
yeah, absolutely. Now, are you finding the loan officers that are signing up for mLoop, or, they're not the ones necessarily signing up. It's the lender that kind of pays the membership, right?
Correct. So for
Okay.
now, at this life stage of the company, lenders pay to participate, and then lenders pay a success fee when an
Okay.
originator joins their company who was matched via mLoop. Loan officers are not paying anything at this time. We anticipate in Q4 into Q1 of next year, but probably in Q4, we will have some paid options on the LO side or the originator side, whether that's
Okay.
TBD, sort of tiered, maybe extra,
Sure.
all workshop, open to all ideas. We're workshopping some of those things, but we will have a free option for sure for that, for probably a long time, for loan officers, just if they want to explore. We don't want to be a blocker to.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So there's really, if someone's just curious to fill out a profile, and just there's no harm in doing that. No
Yeah,
one
that's
no
interesting. I
one
wrote
will see
out.
your name.
I'm a subscriber to a lot of different, business methodology things, and especially for my consulting life. And I was listening to something earlier, and I was like, I'm going to write out this exercise for mLoop. And it was sort of like, for lenders, was sort of like in 5 years, or what were the statements? It was like, for lenders, like, you can't not be on it. And then for originators, there's no reason not to be on it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, so just sort of that was sort of like, okay, if we try to put goalposts out for both of them, was the
Yeah. I mean, there's no harm in it. It's
exactly.
it's completely anonymous. You don't have to pay for it. And I think this would be so interesting to do internally, for our own loan officers, just to see how well matched they are. I mean, I might be a little bit afraid if we did that internally and someone isn't matching, but I mean,
I
I
think
think,
it's a great growth. I mean, wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And there's a great op, and I would love to happy to pilot it with HMI, but there is something to that. And then I'm like, we all have that hesitation, whether a relationship or like, but why not just get the data? And then if there is something where you're only a 70% match with someone, then we're like, all right, what do we need to do to switch that?
Yeah.
And it could be a misunderstanding that X means Y. And you're like, oh no, we actually are on the same page. We just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I
And
saw this a
absolutely.
lot, even with the IMB that I was working with, getting into this industry, is you always need to be retaining, your talent that's with you today. And so I was always saying, even at that lender, and I've talked to other lenders about this, you almost need to like repitch yourselves every year, every couple years to the people that have been there for a long time, because you're telling the people you're recruiting all the new things that you have and all this stuff, but oftentimes the people who have been there might not even realize, like, oh wow, we show up really impressive in recruiting conversations, but you almost have to re-recruit them. So all that to say, I do think there's some interesting application of internally looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would always say, hey, we can't just recruit someone and then say see you never. We have to continuously be dating them. And I always, funny enough, I always would equate recruiting to dating. And when the marriage happens, that's not when you say,
The
okay,
work
see you
stops,
later.
right?
That's where the real work happens. And that you continuously have to date somebody. You continuously have to pour into the relationship and make sure that person is seen and heard. And yeah, I think you're definitely onto something with that. I think that's my wheels are turning. Yeah, let's just I'd love to just talk about where you're really headed. And I know this is brand new, and so it's actually happened pretty quickly,
For sure.
from
Which for my
idea to
personality, I have some great friends that are sort of, pseudo advisors until I can fund actual advisors, but they have to always think, Ellen, you made a ton of progress in 6 months. Like it's
yeah,
so definitely I'd say where we're going. So where we are exactly sort of today, halfway through the year, obviously, in July, we have 12 active lender partners across, like we said, depositories, IMBs, brokers, potentially going to bring a couple of CD partners on. We may add 2 or 3 more lender partners in. We're really not pushing in that space right now until we are sort of operating on all cylinders on the originator side. So the focus for the next quarter is all on the originator awareness, adoption, getting them into the cycle of matching. The technology will continue to evolve. We have another release. So we're just, I'd say in sort of operating mode, but still in beta phase. Goal is to move out of beta by the end of the year, hopefully early Q4, so that when we really hit the, quote unquote, high season of recruiting in Q1 of 27, we're
smart.
really set up for success. So that's really the short term roadmap there. It's still just me. I have a development partner that I'm working with, and like I said, some friends that I have convinced to help listen to me and sort of work through some problems, but would love to grow the team, in the next 6 months or so, just to have, I am such a just want to talk things out. And so having a person or two that are really in it on at least a day-to-day or, week-to-week capacity will be great. And then from there, it's expanding within vertical. So we have already had requests from some of our early adopters could you expand it into, think underwriter roles? Could you expand it into wholesale account execs? So thinking through, could this be the mortgage talent portal, not just originators? So looking at that. And then the next horizon would be out of vertical. So healthcare professional matching, hospitality industry. There's a few other, I'd say, industries or verticals that have these more niche roles that can have specific requests of what you're looking for, that kind of support, basically their own equivalents of technology, products, culture, and it potentially expand into those.
I love that. I love it. I think it's so smart. I think it's so fresh. It's so needed. And for anyone who is in that position to be looking for something, it is frustrating, and you don't know which way to go. There's so much out there, and a lot of times you end up applying to companies and it's a bot, and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is the right fit. I don't know where
Totally.
what I should
Yeah,
do.
and
And
it's
then
so
a lot of
one
times,
way. So people at times have just been like, oh, it's the modern job board or it's a different version of Indeed. And not that those are, 100% wrong, but it doesn't give this account that it's a two-way fit. It's not just
Yeah.
one person replying to a job posting. So you got to figure out what the fit is on both sides. But then also just to the whole point of like earlier on, just know what your options are. Don't wait, I'll say, in the worst case is some people like till your company's acquired, or don't wait until your regional manager leaves, or don't wait until
Yeah.
something, you're really pissed at operations for a while to then be desperate for a change. But like, just if you build up and know your options, the better you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Puts that power back in your hands and puts the ball in your court, so to speak. Where can people find you? What's the first step they should take? Because I just think this is so fun.
I love it. I'm so glad to be able to share it with you.
Yeah.
So a few things, mLoop.co will get you some of the information. There's a quick sign up link there that will get you started into the onboarding, but also just share your info. We're on LinkedIn, mLoop, and on Instagram, mLoopHQ. Also personally, reach out LinkedIn. Myself is Ellen at mLoop.co, and it's been so good. I'd say in the past 6 months, just learning so much more, like I said, about so many different lenders, so many great people that are in the industry. So it's been really fun just to expand within that network as well.
I love it. I love when someone has an idea and brings it to fruition as quick as you did. I feel like you're just at the tip of the iceberg here. I'm excited to follow this journey and see all the great things and great matches that you bring to people. And at the end of the day, these are human beings behind every story that hopefully, brings more joy and value to their life. And it's just that domino effect of giving back. So thank you so much, Elle. This has been great. So guys, follow Ellen Duncan, mLoop. Make sure you like and subscribe Lending Leadership, and let us know. Comment below if this is something that you're interested in, or you create a profile. We want to hear from you. So we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.